Hello everybody. Okay, another little tutorial on the Sirius software, and our subject today is making sure that your rising sign is correct. We tend to take it for granted that we enter the birth data into our astrology software and presto, it fills in all this information about it and we're done. And the tendency, I think, for many of us is we just trust the magic computer producing these magical results, so we don't worry about it. But it's good to know what's going on under the hood, so to speak, a little bit sometimes, because you can't always trust things that are just calculated for you or presented to you. So I want to tell you four things that can cause the rising sign to be wrong in the chart. Okay. Let's see, let's enter some birth information. I'm going to click on Start, and I'll just go to a new list of charts here. Okay, so I'm in the data entry screen here, and I'm going to enter a chart. Now the first reason why the rising sign could be wrong is the daylight saving time information or time zone information in the software may be incorrect. So as an example, I'll just go down here to the date, and I'm going to put in May 7, 2011. Any time is fine. For Santiago, Chile. So I read that in, and it tells me down here, this is the latitude and longitude. It's a south latitude, right, because below the equator. And the time zone is 4 hours west, and daylight time is yes. Now, in the terminology of the Kepler and Sirius software, time zone doesn't change in the summer and winter. Time zone is a time zone. So it is what it is. For Santiago, it's 4 hours west, and daylight time is observed according to this on May 7. Now I'm going to change the date to May 8th. And then I'll just tab over, or I'll click on the time, and whoops, a message pops up. Read in new time zone and daylight saving time information for this new birth date. What happens is Sirius checks to see if the time zone or DST changed when you change the date. Isn't that nice of it? And it noticed that there is a change. If there isn't, then it went through that trouble to check it out, but you don't see anything. So there is a change. I'm going to click yes. We'll see what happens. Time zone 4 hours. Yes, DST. I move a day later, and now there is no daylight time. So on May 8th, daylight time ended. Now remember, this is Southern Hemisphere, so as we head into summer, what would be summer for us, May 8th heading towards summer, but it's heading towards winter, and daylight time is now no. So Santiago, Chile, went off, which is a big, major city in Chile, went off daylight time on May 8th, 2011. Okay, so great. This is what the software is supposed to do. But I'm looking here at my notes. In 2012, it happened in late April. So each year it's a little different, and the rules are changing. See, so in 2011 they waited till May. In 2012 they did it at the end of April. So if I do April 28, 2012, and then I say yes, okay, so there's yes DST on April 28, but the next day I say yes, there's no DST. So the daylight saving time, DST, changes in late April in 2012, changes in early May in 2011. So you may say, great, my software, whatever program I use, looks that up. Well, if you bought your software before 2011, it could not look it up. It would be impossible unless the programmers are extraordinarily psychic, because we don't know what the governments will do. They change the laws every year. So in 20 or 30 countries, or 40 countries sometimes, or parts of those countries, in certain provinces, or what do you call them, counties in some countries, in the United States we call them counties, in some areas of a country, they will change the laws, and sometimes throughout the entire country. And nobody can predict that. Chile is, for me, very frustrating. I'm sure it's a beautiful place, but drives me nuts because they sometimes change their mind every few weeks, and you don't know until the day that they start or end daylight time whether they're actually going to do it or not. So, and this happens in a lot of places. It happens in Argentina, happens in Brazil, lots of countries, large parts of Asia, the former Soviet Union. You know, they're in debating this daylight time thing, and they keep changing their mind, and every year it's different, and different in certain parts of it. So daylight time is not stable. It's very unstable in many countries. By that I mean it keeps changing. So if you have Kepler or Sirius, we have an update link, and that we can send you, that you can update your software. I recommend doing it about once a year in case you do babies or current events, right? So even if you live in the United States and it's unlikely you get a baby born in one of these countries, I don't think it's actually that unlikely because it's a lot of places, you may do current events, and of course they'll change each year. Now, so that's one interesting thing, is that we can't predict the changes in laws. Another thing is, we still, when I say we, nobody knows the daylight saving timetables for the entire world, historically. We don't know that. Research is still going on. And some astrologers are of the opinion that Tom Shanks and Neil Mickelson did this research back in the, or basically it was Tom Shanks who did this research back in the 80s and got the tables perfect. Well, Tom will tell you, or anybody can tell you, they're not perfect. There's ongoing research. We get information every year from users of our software around the world who go in and find the information. The best place is from newspaper articles. If you can find old newspapers for the day that daylight time supposedly started or ended, and see if it's announced in the paper. The laws can help, although they change the laws, so you have to make sure it was the most recent time. Like in Chile, still today, they keep changing it every month or so, right up until the DST actually changes. For some years, they have those big debates. So the research is ongoing. There's still places in the world, there are parts of Argentina, where we still have not been able to get 100% clarity on whether DST was observed in certain provinces in certain years. And even though some astrologers will tell you, and some software vendors may tell you, oh, we know, well, it's easy to say that. Where's the proof? Where are the laws and so on? And actually gets very sloppy when you get down to it. Now, we've been getting information on Asia, South America, many other places, and finding out that the daylight timetables for previous years could be completely, well, not completely incorrect, they can be off a month or two. So an example would be, we've gotten information for Tbilisi, T-B-I-L-I-S-I, Georgia. So now we know, very well researched by one of our users in software users in that part of the country, that in 1996, if I put in March 30th, oops, helps if you can type, March 30th, 1996, and I tab over, and it tells me that that's a 4 hours east time zone. And then if I go to March 31st, then it says, do I want to read in a new one? And so DST started on March 31st, 96. We had the wrong date for that, as basically everybody had the wrong date, because we didn't have the best information. So this information is still coming in, comes in every year. We update tables. I could give you hundreds and hundreds of examples. I mean, literally, many, many hundreds. Some of our tables are completely changed over the last 10 years as we've gotten the correct information. So it ended October 26th. This is all kinds of countries. Another example is New Zealand. I mean, these are all over the world. So Christchurch is a major city in New Zealand. I could read that in. It tells me it's 12 hours east on this date. So, for example, we recently got the research that in 1937, September 4, 1937, the time zone was actually 11 and a half hours. Some countries have half-hour time zones, like India still today, I believe, has a 5.5-hour time zone. And then if we go the next day, September 5th, as we head into, well, let me just do this. September 5th, yes, and now it changes to a 12-hour time zone instead of 11.5. They actually changed the time zone. So there you go. We had the wrong data for decades of New Zealand, as all software does, until we got the more accurate information. So this research is ongoing. I'm sure there are lots of errors in the United States as well. Nobody's gone back to document this. You could go to the libraries and get these newspaper articles or even laws passed, and we could verify some of these things. Would be wonderful, because the research needs to keep going on. We keep getting it. We keep updating. If you have our software, you don't have to wait for a new version of software. You can get the update to it, which is free to update your data each year. Is a good idea. About once a year is a good idea to do it. I update our tables twice a year, in the spring and the fall, when a lot of the laws change, as well as throughout the year if I get information from our customers. So if you have information on daylight time, sometimes I'll read an article or a discussion somewhere and somebody says, the daylight time in all programs is wrong, I remember reading this about Pakistan. Well, let me know. I want to update my table. So I got that information and updated the tables and got it right. Okay, so there's one issue. Time zone and daylight saving time tables are not perfect. There's ongoing research. We've been researching this since the 80s. We've been working on it. We've developed our own tables to ensure that they're accurate, and we put hundreds of hours into this. Well, now at this point, I may spend 2 to 3 days, sometimes a week, twice a year, updating the tables. Occasionally I get a huge amount of new information that we carefully verify, document, make sure. We don't want to replace good information with bad information. It's a tedious process, and so we keep that work up. We haven't been telling our customers about this. It's sort of a little secret, but we're coming out now to let people know what really goes on with astrology software, issues that are going on. We can't just hide our head in the sand about these things. Okay, so that's good to know about. Now, also, I could talk forever about this. There's a public domain information thing called TZ Database that provides information. It's not complete for our purposes. It also doesn't have the historical information. So anyway, we use a lot of different resources. One of the main ones is astrologers going back and doing that research and verifying and determining if the information in their part of the world is correct. Okay, so that's one thing. Tables may be wrong. Either we didn't know if it's historical or the program's not been updated. We do that. You can check with other companies. You can compare and see if that's true. I don't want to make critiques on other programs and just focus on our own. Okay, now another problem could be, this is really interesting if you're not familiar with this. This is kind of crazy. I'm going to pick Chicago 1952, summer. So I'll just say July 1st, 1952, right? Looks innocent. Chicago's a, huge city, and this is a year when lots of people could be born. So, Chicago, Illinois. By the way, it's nice here in Sirius. It gives individual hospitals If you know what hospital they're born in, you can get the exact latitude and longitude. All these different hospitals. Anyway, that's a nice feature. But suppose we don't know, we just use Chicago, which is, generally close enough. It's a big city, and you can get the exact coordinates over here, but that's fine for most purposes. And then I get a warning. As soon as I enter Chicago, Illinois, I read that in, it says, warning, daylight saving time was legally observed at this time in Illinois, but hospitals were required to record times in standard time. Can you believe this? Crazy laws. In other words, daylight time is observed. It's the summer. But the hospitals were told to record the times in standard time. So everybody pushes the clock ahead, in March or April or whenever daylight saving time started, usually April in the United States. They push the clock ahead. So, instead of being 8 o'clock in the morning, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, but the hospital is told, don't use the actual clock time, always record in standard time. So, guess what? Some hospitals actually did this. They actually followed the law. Some nurses have told me, who've worked in these places, they'd have 2 clocks on the wall. A clock with the actual time, and then a clock with the time they would record the birth time, which should be an hour earlier in the summer. It's just crazy, the laws they make up. So some hospitals actually did this. So here, we don't know if daylight saving time was used when it was recorded, and then they're crazy enough to just put the time on the birth certificate without making it clear. So a lot of times, in these cases, it may be very difficult to know how the time was recorded. Was it recorded with the clock time, or did they adjust it? So this lets you know. Places in Philadelphia and Illinois during certain years in certain parts of those states, we know that there's a problem, we let you know. So if there's real ambiguity, we'll let you know about that, just so to let you know. We don't know what's going on. And that's good to know, that you might want to change this to no DST if you think the hospital the person was born in may have done that. And we also have certain hospitals where we know that to be the case, and they're in the database. Okay, so that's another issue for why your chart could be an hour off. The rising sign changes about every 2 hours on average. So if the chart is off an hour because we don't have the right time zone and DST information, there's about a 50% chance that the rising sign could be wrong, just looking at it that way, as long as placement of planets and houses, etc., and so on. So that's another issue. Now, third issue that could cause your chart to be wrong is the calendar in use. Now let me show you this problem. Let me enter a chart for some ancient date back in, let's just do July 1st, 1500. So I click on the time, right tab, and boink, a big window opens up. That might seem a little disturbing, but we have something important to tell you for this date, which is that there's issues about calendars. So when you enter an ancient date, actually I think it's before 1582, we pop up this message, because 1582 is when the new style or Gregorian calendar started being used in some countries. And this is the thing that comes up in astrology. Some astrologers think that in 1582 the whole world changed from the old style, or also known as Julian calendar, to the new style, also called the Gregorian calendar. Oh, that would be so nice if it was that simple. And here we have, to help you out with this, some countries. For example, Alaska switched over to the new style in 1867. Look at this, Albania. Can I highlight this? Yeah. Albania switches in 1912. So you're doing somebody's parent, their father or mother or grandparents born in 1905. You enter the chart, they were born in Albania. You're happy. You're perfect software that knows everything and is omniscient, gave you perfect information. But guess what? It was actually the old-style calendar in use, most likely, because that's officially what people should be using, although you could imagine some people might have said, let me get with the rest of the world and actually be using the new style calendar. So what's in the books and on the laws isn't always what people do, so this gets complicated. Now this isn't a matter of an hour, this is a matter of changing 13 or 14 days. I guess it's 14 days. 2 weeks later. So the chart is off by 2 weeks. So these are things to be aware of. Now we only pop up this message if the days before 1582. Maybe I'll improve the program and check for specific countries before certain dates. I just thought of that just now to warn you. That would be a nice improvement to the software. Here's Bulgaria, a lot of Eastern Europe not changing till the 1900s. And according to different sources, I've got sources here, it happens on different dates in different countries. So anyway, Canada, China 1911, December 1911, I didn't know that. Even places in Europe, supposedly in the 1580s, but here's England, didn't change till 1752. Estonia, not till 1918. Anyway, it's fascinating. You get the idea. Somewhere in the 1600s, etc., 1900s, different times. So that's an issue. You may have the wrong calendar. Now, because this calendar stuff is so complicated, Kepler and Sirius always use the new style calendar, and that makes it simple. Otherwise, it's crazy. So some programs say, well, before 1582, we can use old style. It's better that they either let you choose or you just make it uniform. And we just make it uniform. It's just new style, period. So you convert it to new style if it was an ancient chart in old style. So that's another issue. Be aware of the calendar problems. I'm just saying no, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's the deal there. I just told it not to read in information. Anyway, so calendars, another reason why your chart could be wrong, and that's more than rising sign, the whole chart. And last thing I want to mention, rather technical issue, I suppose, and then I'll be done with this video, is something called delta T, and this gets to be a bigger deal for really old charts. Let me give you an example. It's not such a problem with birth charts. It becomes a problem for things like lunations and eclipses, especially if you go very far back in time. So I'm going to click on this feature to get lunations and eclipses. And let's do lunations and eclipses. Let me do a solar eclipse. I had entered this earlier, actually, when I was thinking about what I was going to present here. And I put in January 1st, year 10. Okay, so the year 10, January 1st. And that's a new style calendar date. Just see, it keeps it simple. You don't have to wonder what's going on when you enter a progressed date or a return date. If you start changing calendars, you might have a birth chart in old style, and then the return when they're older is in new style, and it just starts getting crazy. You can end up with a birth date that's after the return date or something because you change calendars. Anyway, so that's what we do. I'll just tell it, just give me one return. Okay, so now I've got solar eclipse, and it's going to calculate that for me. And there's this delta T. Let me click on that. And delta T, it's going to use the normal setting, 253.30. Okay, fine. Cancel. Now let's look at the chart. I click done, and I've got the solar eclipse, sun and moon, exactly 12 degrees Capricorn. If I go to a listing here, or if I added seconds to the wheel, which you could also do, but real quick I can look at this, and it shows me to the second, 12 degrees, 27 minutes, 11 seconds. Solar, this is what we call astrological. I could talk about that in a future video, but anyway, there's different ways of defining solar eclipse, and this is done astrologically where the longitude is identical to the second, less than a second of arc actually. So there it is. And we have an ascendant of 11 degrees Libra. Fine. I think my astrology is perfect. It's omniscient. It was written by God. It's perfect. That's it. Well, it's not perfect. So if I go back to the data entry screen, and I play with this delta t, it tells me, let me pull this into the center of the screen a little bit, it tells me that delta t is a calculation needed, blah, 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 blah. And anyway, I'm not going to read all that. But basically, I could say, first of all, it's handy just to see this, even if I don't change it, that what this is saying is I could go 25% down, means instead of 253.30 as delta t, it would be 252.06, which is a little over a minute difference, not a huge amount. Means I'm 25% down in my confidence from the expected probable value, which means it's 75% sure. Astronomers are 75% sure that the delta t is between 252.06 and 254.04, 25% up. It explains that here. In other words, astronomers are 75% confident that delta t excuse me, falls between 25% down and 25% up. So let's go to, for example, where they're 50% confident. So, in other words, there's a 50% chance the delta t is actually 250.31, about 3 minutes earlier. Does that make any difference? Well, let's see. Let's go down, because this could actually be the delta t. Astronomers don't know delta t precisely in the year 10. And the further back we go, the worse it gets. But, you know, it's pretty close. It's only 3 minutes off. There's still a 25% chance it's even worse. But anyway, we'll select this, 50% sure. It's 50% probability. Could be as low as this or as high as the other, setting. Now, so let's see. I had 11 degrees Libra rise, 11 Libra 44. It's going to change my ascendant. So what's going to happen? I'm going to hit done. Well, not too much. It only moved it a small amount. And what difference did it make on the midheaven? I've got 14 Cancer, 18. Oh, well, anyway, I was going to show you something. Let me go back to delta t and set it to normal. And 14 Cancer, 18 versus 13 Cancer, 37. So I made a little bit bigger of a difference, getting close to a degree, about 3/4 of a degree. Well, so not a huge difference. Now, in some cases, it'll be a bigger difference, especially in the ascendant, because the ascendant varies in speed a lot. So, you could get a degree difference. I've seen cases where it was 2 degrees different. So, so there you go. 2 degrees on the ascendant, going back that time. Not a huge difference, but if you're doing ingresses or eclipses in ancient charts, something to know about. It's unlikely. This is not a problem going back to at least 1700. So that's a very minor issue unless you do historical research. So there you go. I went from the more dramatic to the less dramatic things. This is technical. This might not be the most exciting thing in the world. You might rather do some personality analysis. This might be more exciting. But these are things under the hood that are good to be aware of. Oh, what I was going to tell you before is if I right-click and I select a wheel that has this table of information here, and I click OK, and it shows me delta t, 253.30. I'll go back to the data entry screen, click on delta t, set it to 25% down, click OK, click done, and look at that wheel, and now it tells me that it's this is a squashed screen. I've got everything compressed. In your normal thing, it won't overlap, but it says 25% down. This is all because I'm in this compressed screen capture thing, and everything gets squashed together. But it's 25% down. So it tells you that it was adjusted, so you know that if you display that table. So anyway, let me go back and set my delta t back to normal, because it says important. The value selected will be used for all new charts. So I'll leave it on the normal setting, which is the best guess of astronomers as to what delta t is. Okay, well, I hope that was reasonably interesting to you and not too too tedious. I think it should be great to know that there's no guarantee that your charts are correct. The laws change every year. That's important to know. The historical information isn't perfect. And these are some of the things that we do at Cosmic Patterns behind the scenes, is updating these tables, going through this stuff. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it ensures that we're getting the calculations as best as humanly possible. And we're dead serious about this. We've been working on this since the 80s, entering this data, fixing it, updating it, and sometimes really a headache comparing information from different sources about whether the law was passed or was it not passed, etc. But it all helps ensure that your charts are as accurate as possible. And this is not theoretical. I think it was a year or two ago, someone called up and said, with a problem not related to this, and she said, by the way, just to let you know, I did a chart for a child who was, I don't remember how old, 5 or 10 years old or something, born in Argentina, and I did the analysis, and then when I sent the client the chart, she said the ascendant was wrong, had the wrong sign, because apparently this particular client loves to get astrology readings and had gotten 2 others, one from an astrologer in Argentina, one from an astrologer in the United States, and they both agreed, and this customer of ours used, I don't know if it was Kepler or Sirius, and have a different ascendant. Well, the problem is they just didn't have accurate tables in the other programs, and when the client found out, she was just thrilled that this astrologer had it right and was sort of amazed that others didn't. So this is the thing, a few cases like that, and it does come up reasonably often for certain countries, that we have the best that we could figure out, and we continue to work at it. So let us know if you ever get any information on daylight saving time. At this point, it's really very good. There's so much research done. I actually think the United States is probably one of the worst, because we haven't gone back to check all these tables, and nobody has gone back. But in other countries, more work has been done. It's somewhat simpler in most countries, because they don't have so many little divisions. We've got 50 states, and each county has, each state has lots of counties, and it varied by each county. So it got complicated in the United States until they started making it more uniform in the 1970s. But the 50s and 60s in the United States is a nightmare for some states, and we still need more research. Okay, enough. We'll do some more exciting astrological kinds of things in future videos, but I think this is important to know about, and I hope you got something out of it. Okay, thank you. God bless. Namaste.